Make your workflow work the way you want it to with the end and terminate elements in Jotform. But what are they and when should you use each one? I'm Michelle and I'll show you how the end element helps you create customized, flexible workflows in Jotform. Let's go. I'll show you when to use the end element and when to use the terminate element and the difference between them. Super simple summary. The end element is more of a visual, like, hey, this is where this branch ends. And the terminate element is the actual stop. Everything stops on the workflow. So in this example, it's a relatively simple workflow. It's a social media post approval. And as you can see, we go through the flow and there's really only one outcome. It's going to be approved or it's going to keep getting revised until it is approved. So for a workflow where there's really only one path or one outcome, it's not that important to have an end or terminate element there, and you could use either really. Where it gets important is when you have multiple branches that can independently continue on and end on their own, but you want other branches to continue. So I'll show you an example of that. As you can see, this is a more complex example than our first one, and we have multiple branches that can be happening at the same time here, depending on, the department here at the top, the conditions that are chosen. So this is where it's really important to have the end and terminate elements in the right spot, depending on what you want your workflow to do. The difference between them is that the end element is more of a visual representation of that branch of a workflow ending, whereas the terminate element stops all further progress on the workflow. So what that means is that when you have an end element, like pictured here and here, that ends this branch of the workflow. But if there were other things going on, like here on the other side, it was going through this branch and this branch over here and this one here. If you hit an end on one of them, that just finishes that process, but the other ones can continue. So the workflow will continue. On the other hand, with terminate, as soon as you reach a terminate element, everything stops. So for example, let's say we're a new employee registering and we're going to send that to the marketing department here and also finance and executive. So that's 3 branches we're currently moving down in our workflow. They're happening at the same time and they're moving through this process. And those are happening at different speeds, right? Jotform's working at the same speed, but someone in finance may respond slower than the executive. But that's fine because things can coexist in the workflow and go through multiple branches at the same time. And let's just say that our marketing branch over here, say they're super speedy and they get through everything and they finish first. So they've done all their tasks in this branch and we reach this end element. So there's no more tasks for the marketing team to do. Because this is an end element, that's fine. Because the whole workflow doesn't stop. That's just the visual representation of the end of this branch. So these other teams, finance, executive, they can continue doing their process at their own pace. Now, where you would have a problem in this workflow is if this end element were a terminate element. So let's just show that. Okay, so going through that same example, we've got a new employee registering and their information goes to marketing, finance, and executive here, these 3 branches. And once again, let's say our marketing team is super speedy and we're going through this branch of the workflow and we reach this terminate element. Now everything stops. So what that means is that these other branches, the finance and executive branches that were continuing through their workflow, they stop. They can no longer take action on this submission because we hit the terminate and everything stops. Sometimes you might want that depending on your workflow. But in this case where we want the workflow to continue on multiple branches and for multiple things to be happening at the same time, we don't want to have a terminate here. We want to have an end. So I'll show you how to switch between them and make sure that you're using the right one. So you just go up to add element and right at the end here, you pick end, which is the same for both of them, drag it into your workflow. And then you just want to connect that to whichever branch you're wanting to end. Click and drag to draw your link between the elements. There we go. We've connected it and that's the end of those branches. And then if we wanted to add a terminate, it's the same process. You drag in the end element and then you just click it, go to settings and choose terminate. And you can always switch between them as well. So if you end up editing your workflow and you realize that you want the whole process to stop entirely after certain branches, you can just click on any end or terminate element and go into settings and just switch it between the two anytime you need to. One other quick note is that you can have multiple of each of these in your workflow. So that means you can have multiple end elements, right? When you're ending each branch of the workflow, but you can also have multiple terminate ones. You don't need just one. So it's super flexible. It really depends on what you want your workflow to do and how you want it to work for you. But I hope that clears up the difference between end and terminate. As always, thanks for watching. Leave a comment below if you have any questions about end and terminate or anything else in Jotform workflows. Make sure you like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any more Jotform tips, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!